So hi, this is the San Miguel Archives, and we're here with Betse Davies to talk about her life in San Miguel. So can you tell us where you came from? Let's start there.
Oh my goodness, originally or recently?
Originally.
I came from Columbus, Ohio. I hadn't been out of the country, the state, for years and years and years. And we first move was to New York Adirondacks. So when people say they're from New York, I say, where? They mean New York City, but they forget about the Adirondacks. So I pin them down anyway. Then we went to Venezuela, and all this produced 4 kids.
And what were you doing in Venezuela? Was your husband's work?
He was a geologist for a mountain of iron for U.S. Steel. And we came back and lived in Florida, but first we were in Pennsylvania, where I got a master's in education, so I could teach. It wasn't my college major.
Yeah. What year was this?
In the 60s. So in the 60s, I was busy. I was very busy with 4 kids and teaching. And I never did get down to San Miguel because where my parents spent their winters in the 50s and 60s.
And your father was taking painting classes?
He was a painter by avocation and had lots of talent. But it wasn't considered proper by his parents to major in art, so he became a civil engineer. But he loved painting, and he heard that someone very well known was making, in the art world, from Chicago, that was Sterling Dickinson. His influence had spread down, of all places, Central Ohio, and it inspired my father to come down here in the wintertime. And he got to love the place, but my mother would not move down. It was scary, you know, but she did all right for herself.
And did he talk much about what life was like then?
Yes, he wrote a lot of letters. And
do you remember what he would say?
well, he liked it a lot. Of course, he missed a lot of things. But it wasn't a case of missing, and they don't have, and they don't have, and they don't have. Now you can buy russet potatoes in San Miguel now, make your French fries.
So what did they do socially? Did they talk about that?
Everybody knew everybody, and activities were centered around the Instituto.
So who were his teachers?
Oh, his teacher was James Pinto, reputed to be the best art instructor. There's a gallery named for him at the Institute.
Did he talk about other people during those times? Who
Yes,
was
he made some very good friends. A couple who were from Canada. And when I finally got down here in 1973 for the first time, I went to a couple of parties on Hernando Macias. Well, now, of course, it's not a house anymore. It's a business, but they were elegant houses.
So what was your life like when you first got here in 73?
I came down to study Spanish at the Instituto, and that counted as my educational requirement for teaching. But I was able to use that because in between semesters and during the summer, for a couple of years, I worked at Disney World on Main Street, selling cameras and film and so on in a store. And they'd get somebody that was having trouble, didn't speak English, only spoke Spanish. They had no Spanish speakers at all then. And they'd come to me. Well, my Spanish after 4 years in Venezuela and taking lessons here was pretty good back then. I could even speak in the subjunctive. That was a great period in my life to work in Disney World. I recommend it highly.
And so when you came for the first time, how long did you stay?
about 6 weeks.
Okay. And did you come back after that on regular visits?
Not until 1989.
Okay.
Lots happened in there because when I first went home, I struggled through a divorce. And I mean struggled with my family through a divorce. And
Because it was unacceptable?
just wasn't proper to do that. But anyway, I was teaching school and to support myself and my kids in college by then. And finally I found a Welshman, or he found me.
Mm-hmm.
We were married for 23 years before he died in 2000 of cancer.
So he moved down here with you in 89.
We come down for long periods. And they got longer and longer, and we finally rented a house on Pilancone for a couple of years. But he was ill then. We couldn't buy anything. Didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
I still think renting is better.
So when did you make the decision to move here full time?
He was so concerned about what would happen to me. And I said, I'm going to move to San Miguel. What do you think of that? And he was very satisfied. He loved the people here.
Mm-hmm.
Murray Camelhar was one of his good friends. Joe Urshan, Farley Wheelwright,
Mm-hmm.
they corresponded. And so I moved down. Pretty soon, Lise Weigman, my landlady, wanted her house back. She says, I'm drinking, I'm smoking, I need my house back. Just like that, there I was, sort of without my recovering period, grieving period. But I found an apartment next to the Angelo Peralta until I finally found a place at the Quinta, Loreto. And here I am, some 23 years later, at the Quinta.
So when you came down, I know you got immersed very quickly into San Miguel life. Tell us about what you were doing back then.
Oh, my one and only theatrical performance was with Murray Camelhar and Dylan Thomas. And best of all, I became a tour guide. I fought the idea of going on a tour. Why should I go on a historical tour? I've been reading about everything and I know everything. I took a tour just for fun and I was hooked.
And you did this with Patronale Pro Niños, correct?
Yeah, this was just, Billy Bremer started this in 1991.
As a fundraiser.
As a fundraiser for Patronato Pro Niños, which gave medical and dental and psychological care to the needy kids. And they have made a tremendous difference in the countryside. Especially, of course, they have their clinic here. Now it's a bazaar and a clinic. Mm-hmm. So eventually, Bob Latta said, I can't head the group up anymore. Betsy, would you like to do that? I says, sure, scared to death. But it became my passion. And I worked hard in that for about 20 years.
And you were also training guides, correct?
Yeah, we did everything. I did everything. I had lots of help on the publicity. I didn't know too much about delegating power and having committees and things, because the thing just grew so gradually. And yet it grew. It's amazing. There's an article about the start of San Miguel tours. And they gave one tour every Tuesday. Pretty soon they had to hire another tour guide. Then they had to add more days. and it blossomed into a group of 30 guides,
Oh, it's very big.
and they were passionate about their work. I can't imagine a better group of people. Then we branched out on that while I was still working in it. And Jay Muscovich took over an architectural tour and trained people in that one. And we had a church tour with George Tassett. It was phenomenal. He must have Asperger's or something, but he knows everything about every Spanish saint or custom or tradition as far as churches go. But now it's all certified guides, alas.
So when you were doing your research, because I know you spent a lot of time studying San Miguel history, tell us some of the most fascinating things you learned.
Well, I think it's the overall, at one point they had a tour of the houses around the downtown area. Of course, that's what the town was very small then. Mm-hmm. We really got inside those places. And Barry Devine typed out an analysis of that tour. They don't give that anymore. I mean, we actually went in the yellow house right on the corner. It's a vast house with a family dispersed around the second floor. Naturally, the first floor is given over to the business. I used to think they were hard up, but that's the way. People that had stores in the bottom of their houses and lived above them, I thought, isn't that too bad? But it wasn't at all. It was the custom.
Yes.
Yeah, there are a lot of customs you get used to here in San Miguel. Mm-hmm. So running the tours kept me pretty busy because that was 3 times a week. You see, I got to show the plaque now. I had a special tour from a group from Houston. It's a birthday tour. There were about, I'd say 15 women involved in it. And one of the women was Sharon Kurtz, who has gone on to do very interesting things. And she had a business making plaques like this for sale in Neiman Marcus and in catalogs and so on. It's one of my father's paintings, sketches of the parochia, and she's run a wash over it. And she said, I can make, that's what this is, I can make you a birthday plaque too. And you can give it to the people who come down. So she made about 30 of them. Those little iron stands that they're on. But it has a place of honor in my living room. Mm-hmm. But the hard part was, you have to think of 3 mottos that are short that you believe in. Oh. So I worked on that a while and came up with, have fun, smile a lot, and be of some use. The top one's the most important one. Because having fun, I have fun being of some use. That constitutes a great deal of my time now.
And so what are some of the groups you worked with?
Okay. I had the privilege of being in on the ground floor of the founding of Jóvenes Adelante.
You can tell us what that's about?
Jóvenes Adelante is a scholarship fund. Well, we had 4 students, 4 or 5 students. One dropped out because he figured his farm was more important than an education. A very bright boy. So we had enough money to put them through college, basically. They still have to work some. And in the bank. And the people involved mainly were Helen Morris and Farley Wheelwright's wife, Virginia Wheelwright, and several others of us. Got together here at the Quinta and started this group. And that was based on the fact that David Rico, that I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, he runs the best tour group in San Miguel, the Vagabundos.
Mm-hmm.
He had gotten a scholarship to go to a university, which was then, now is in Querétaro, but was here. And president of the university's wife called up Helen, we've got this boy, he's got a scholarship, he's terrific, but he hasn't got any shoes, that's the story. But eventually they became so close that he called her grandma, and he took care of her before she died in a loving manner. When he graduated, he was valedictorian of his class.
Wow.
And then Helen says, what possibilities are there for him? And to make a long story short, David ended up with an MBA from Texas Christian University on a Fulbright scholarship. And he elected to come back. He'd started tours with Helen to use for the business aspect of his college career.
And how big is the organization now, do you know?
It's growing every year, the number of people. I would say 150 to 200.
And these are college scholarships.
These are college scholarships. And they're very proud to get them, and there's a lot of competition for them. It's too bad they all can't go.
But that's still an amazing accomplishment to give that much opportunity to people.
Oh, yes.
And you also were part of the Rotary Club?
No. I
What
was
else did you
Rotary
do?
Citizen of the Year in 1991, which was an honor that I never dreamed I would ever get. I was also in Mujeres and Cambio, another scholarship group.
Can you explain to us what the group is about?
Mujeres and Cambio goes to the countryside, and they, in a limited number of schools, and they find girls in junior high and high school, and they sponsor them. Now, the teachers recommended them to and they had to maintain a grade average to be part of it. And once they've been recommended and keep their grades up, they will see them through college. It's a fine group. Ladies Inn likes that group and does a lot of fundraising with them. So that was another of my groups I liked. And then in my church, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, we gave NGOs, they submit grants, about 13 of them would submit grants for money, and we would vet them and make sure, you know, that you're supposed to do when you get a grant.
Mm-hmm.
And we continue to do that through the San Miguel Unitarian Foundation, an entirely different group than the church spiritual aspect itself. But we give about 50% of our income, we try to these NGOs every year.
And what are a few of those projects like?
Patronato por Niños, Mujeres en Cambio, Casita Linda, the Deaf School,
Right.
about 4 of them, which is amazing. CEDESA, which is a Mexican-run NGO that helps communities, mostly in the rural area of San Miguel, and
So-
that's about half of them.
Okay. Well, let's go back to some of your historical research about San Miguel. Because I know you've read a lot. So tell us a few of the stories that you uncovered that you find interesting.
I find it very interesting that Robert Degas would give me $100 if I could prove to him that there were tunnels under San Miguel. He absolutely rejected the idea. I could have proved that to Robert Degas, but unfortunately, after producing a lot of books and history, maybe you're familiar with some of them, The Doors of San Miguel.
Yes.
He went home and became ill, and both of them died. What are some other things? If you look around, you just pick up things like Calle de Indios, and numero 15 is the home Neil Cassidy had here. Now that's all going to go, eventually. I was trying to set up a tour of recent gringo history. It's getting to 100 years very rapidly. And these things are being lost. So I've saved what I could save. If you ever run across anything by Catherine Walsh, be sure to save it.
Okay.
She writes on San Miguel. She wrote on San Miguel. And she was one of the reporters for the investigating reporters for the Nuremberg trials. She's been gone a long time.
Katie, I remember Katie now. Yes, of course. She has her sketchbook still from the Nuremberg trials, but I'm trying to get a hold of.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I have as many articles as I could get about her and her notes on what the tour said about the parochia. That's garbage. There's nothing, she'd speak right up about, make notes on the original script about different things, because I rewrote the script in 2013 from the original script for the walking tours.
So when you would do these walking tours, what would be the few things that surprised people that they would be in awe of?
St. Patrick, why is he so in front of right up front in the church? Meaning he was very important.
And why is he?
Because the Irish battalion that deserted, that's a whole other subject, that deserted the American army when they were trying to take over. You can tell I hadn't done the tour for a long time. They were trying to take over the property that Mexico owned in the United States, and they were looking for something to start a war. And there they are sitting down there waiting to invade in the American army, and they're looking at this lovely scene across the Rio Grande. The church, people going to church, and they related to those people because somehow or other they got it in their minds, this is just like Ireland and the UK.
Catholicism.
Yeah. And the British, how they would treat the Irish. This is what we're doing to them. And the battalion abandoned the army resigned, got out, and helped fight that war valiantly till the end. Their leaders were shot or jailed or was very bad. That's why they have an Irish society in Mexico City, because of that. That's why St. Patrick is right up front in the church. Then you get over to the Bellas Artes, and I have them stand in the door and look at that picture of Christ. It's a story of Christ's baptism and so on. And starting with the first panel, you stand at the front door and you look at that right across from you, and you realize you see a picture, a wonderful picture on the walls. But then if you stop and look at it from a structural point of view, how did they ever get that? Because it's on so many pieces, you have to, but you still see a picture. Do you know how Siqueiros got those murals up there? What device do you suppose he used? Did you ever teach school?
No.
Were you ever taught with the teacher using an overhead projector?
That was my day, yes.
That's exactly what he used. Now, how do I know that? It's because Wilhelmina's father was an art expert.
Josh Kligerman?
Yeah. And he saw them doing this. And he was, Siqueiros, I mean, that's exciting. And they look and, wow, they were really impressed with that. He said, now look at it. And there's a sort of a motion aspect to it, from one to another. And he's thrilled by this idea of artists using tools, and he wanted to make his paintings flow like a movie. So down in Mexico City, you can see a room devoted to his love of movies, using a Lazy Susan with guides and the audience on the Lazy Susan going around the room watching this movie, mural.
And so what are some of your favorite buildings in town and their stories?
Well, of course, the Canal Palace.
What's the story?
This classic architecture, absolutely classic. You compare it with the home of Allende, and you can see the Baroque, you know. You do something because it feels good. I think I'll do this today. And the windows don't match necessarily in design, whereas classic is predetermined how you're going to do it.
And can you tell us, share the history with us?
Well, it was built during the architectural period, and it's got 3 sections in it now. And now it is a fabulous museum of the highest quality. They just opened it last year.
And what's inside?
Different rooms devoted to different aspects of history and crafts, and of course banking.
Because it's the Banamex building.
The Banamex building. And of course the story of the doorway. Have you noticed the doorway on the house? The Virgin of Loreto was flown over by angels when there was a threat of war to a spot in Italy. And that's Loreto, Italy. And she was the patron saint of the Canal family.
And what can you tell us about the Canal family?
They were rich. These people had their houses downtown, and they tried to get a clear view of the people coming in with the crops because they were relying a lot on the produce of their farms for their wealth in the mining area. And the Camino Real went through. You see, one thing leads to another in the history, and that's another story. With haciendas out there in Mexiquito, the basis of one is the boys' orphanage. That's prime property.
What are some of your favorite memories of San Miguel?
Oh, the people. If you ever fall down in San Miguel, if you do, somebody's going to be there. And I've had that happen, unfortunately, for falling. But when you build streets and sidewalks like they do here, you're going to find a lot of people falling. Can you imagine a wheelchair on this terrain? You don't see many.
Too hard. So any other favorite memories through the years that you've spent here?
My time spent at the holidays, that now I hear the bells ringing and I know what's going on, and that's a wonderful thing. Like the Indians pounding on their drums and the dancing going on in the square. There's nothing like living downtown. It might be too crowded at times, but New Year's Eve, I wouldn't touch it now. But I can remember when we went down and danced in the streets. One day in the early days that we were here, that would be in the 1900s, early, I walked downtown by myself, and I could not believe what I saw. There wasn't a car around there. The whole place was filled with flowers. Well, of course, it was Candelaria. But what did I know? It was my first experience with it. It probably was 1990 in February. It was just like the world lit up with all those flowers, and it just overwhelmed me. And later on, of course, they moved Candelaria to Parque Juarez, and even worse, they moved it out to during the pandemic. That was a total failure. But it's beautiful in Juarez, but I'll never forget the sight of coming down, not knowing what's going to happen, and this happening. It was terrific.
Any other memories that stick out for you?
It's just life is so different here. I mean, you can get a charge out of a wedding bursting out of a church. We were walking by, and the band starts up, and the mariachis play, sing, or just the little things they do can turn you on.
Well, thank you, Betsy, for sharing your memories with us.
Thank you for asking. It's important that we preserve a lot of them. And I thank you for your time and energy you put into this. Please hit the like button. My life would have been nothing if I'd never been in San Miguel.